Good evening and welcome to tonight's Inside Story. Public transport. Well, for most people, it's pretty easy to catch. But for the disabled, it's a daily struggle, and it's something that's affecting not only their social life, but also their prospects for work. Commuters have choices, and for most, the convenience. But for the disabled, getting around is a daily battle with limited services available to them. Janine Graham looks at their struggle and talks to those who even say it's costing them jobs.
Mak Chun spends nearly all his days at home. He has no choice. He's one of the thousands of wheelchair-bound people in Hong Kong who simply don't have the transport to go anywhere.
It's very boring. I'm forced to stay at home. All I can do all day is watch TV, listen to the radio, and read the newspapers. That's my whole life.
With a lack of facilities on most public transport in the territory, the only choice for much of the disabled community is a network of specially designed vehicles called RehabBus. But now even that's become a service many can't use, with a shortage of buses and expensive fares.
I have to keep a limit on the number of times I go out, and my social life is getting more and more narrow. I'm getting more and more lonely, and some disabled people become so quiet and feel inferior.
A park below his home is the farthest Mr. Chung can usually go. Now working freelance as a shoe designer, the lack of transport has cost him the chance of full-time employment, already hard to find for members of the disabled community.
The employer asked me to work for him when he learned that I didn't have any stable job. So I went to Shantian, the factory, to meet him. He wanted to employ me right after interviewing me, and he offered $9,000 at that time. That was 2 years ago. Then, when I tried to arrange transport, I couldn't, and I lost my opportunity.
The RehabBus runs two kinds of routes. One is just like a public bus, which takes a regular route, and the other is a kind of taxi service. It's this which people say they have to use if they're to travel freely, but it's just too costly.
The fee to travel on RehabBus is even higher than a taxi.
How can that be if it has like a number of seats in one bus?
Yeah, well, actually it shouldn't be more expensive than a taxi, because if I guess everybody knows if you ask a taxi to wait for you for a minute, it's at least $1, right? And every minute counts, and so by the hour, it's $60 an hour, right? Our rehab buses, the maximum charge per hour is only $30 an hour. But for a lot of people, it appears more expensive, is because, say for example, if you want to book a trip, a day trip on a Sunday afternoon to a particular event, and you want to hold the buses for a long period of time, say 10 hours, that 10 hours would cost you like $300 already, and plus of course the kilometers run.
But the cost of these non-regular routes on RehabBus, called Dial-A-Ride, is just one problem. 20% of requests to use Dial-A-Ride are being rejected because of a shortage of buses.
We have about 1,200 to 1,400 bookings a month, and we do roughly at about 8,000 to 11,000 men trips a month.
To take trips on the scheduled journeys offered by RehabBus, it's only a few dollars, but many existing routes are already packed, and setting up new routes can mean a long wait.
Sometimes if they're very fortunate and they fit into an existing route where there is still capacity, well then obviously they don't quite have to wait. But there are occasions where people have to wait a year or so or more than that.
RehabBus is already largely subsidized by the government. New funding will soon bring 7 more buses onto the road, but even that is unlikely to make much difference.
As we sort of increase our level of services, we also have an increasing demand for services.
Leaders of the disabled community say there should at least be a travel allowance.
We've been asking mobility allowance for more than 10 years, and every time they come back with a negative reply. Government is now considering the feasibility of such a mobility allowance. I hope this time government can give us a more favorable reply.
The public transport system virtually ignores the needs of disabled people. While some services, such as the mass transit railway, have begun to change all that, there's strong resistance among bus companies. They argue it's too expensive, having to buy new buses with a low floor for wheelchairs or hydraulic lifts.
They should not be called public transport. They should not call public buses. And I would strongly request government to use administrative means, for example, in the franchise contract. When they come to renew their franchise contract, put in a condition in the franchise to request all public buses to provide services for people with disability.
For now, however, until more is done to create an adequate transport system for the disabled, it seems sheer luck and the goodwill of some are all they have to depend on.
工場度做嘢嘅，
但係佢就參與咗好多同傷殘人士有關嘅組織，經常要出去開會。佢話搭的士去火車站來回要80蚊，如果唔係有私人資助，佢根本負擔唔到。不過自從復康巴士開辦咗一條穿梭線，喺護養院住嘅傷殘人士就多咗一個選擇。
其實有好多傷殘人士個居住環境都係距離搭呢啲咁嘅公共交通車輛係好遠㗎。你去到個火車站啊、地鐵站啊，都係有陣時你搭唔到 M 線，所以呢一次嗰個新嗰個巴士嗰個投標咧，所以我哋係極力咁樣係希望呢個新嘅投標新世界好似係咪新世界啊？就希望佢咧盡量係會設多啲、買多啲係有低地台嘅個巴士啦。
新世界第一巴士發言人話：佢哋將會喺英國買500部低地台巴士，所以除咗原本200部中巴之外，將來大部分喺港島行走嘅巴士呢都方便到傷殘人士。而城巴同九巴亦都會陸續更改而家嘅巴士。
香港又係有條東西線啦，咁其實4、5條線咧，咁每一條線咧有1架或者2架車咧係有輪椅升降台嘅，咁咧佢就一路咁走啦，咁最多我哋係話等耐啲咯。
九巴方面就話，由於車底有好多機器，冇辦法將車身做到更低，同時由於巴士埋站密，乘客流量又大，升降台嘅升降需要花一段時間，所以暫時冇辦法做到。不過佢哋已經有一啲改善，例如新車嘅梯級只有2級，比舊車較易上落。九巴3000幾部車又會逐步喺出入口由熒光漆同加設有凹凸紋嘅扶手，方便弱視人士。但要坐輪椅嘅人，暫時就仍然要人幫手至上到車啦。
肯定唔可以滿意，因為有時係有心無力咯，佢哋都因為好多嘢係有好多限制嚇。舉個例，譬如巴士就真係好遙遠嘅事啦，的士都係嗰個價錢係貴咯嚇，好多人係支持唔住嘅嚇，變咗要 cut 自己嗰啲出街嘅時間咯，
少啲出街同埋盡量喺某一方面去慳啲咯，我諗係要。
最希望做得到咧，就話起碼最基本，如果係需要去返工。或者需要去接受一啲訓練嘅人呢，佢最基本佢一定要可以即係返到工去接受到訓練，因為即係我哋成日都鼓吹咧傷殘人士自力更生啦，咁亦都鼓吹佢哋盡量投入社會，即係去即係建設社會啦。咁所以如果有僱主願意請佢哋亦都願意返工，但係又冇交通工具咧，咁我哋覺得係非常之可惜嘅。
好啦，今次節目時間又夠，我哋下個星期同樣時間再見。